Welcome. Thank you for joining me, everybody. I'm really glad that all of you came and joined me in this discussion. I am a field organizer for Moms Clean Air Force in the Colorado area. Moms Clean Air Force is an organization made up of 1 million plus moms, dads, and caregivers fighting to protect our children's right to clean air and to have a safe, healthy environment. I am a tribal affiliate of the Navajo Nation. I identify myself as being a descendant of genocide of the Indian Removal Act, which to the Navajo was known as the Long Walk of the Navajo. Our rights as Indigenous people are still relevant and our voices are still relevant. That's why I think it was really important that we had this conversation on food sovereignty. And I'm really thankful that I have these speakers from Iowa, from Arizona, the Meskwaki Nation of Iowa, the Diné people of Arizona from the Navajo Reservation. I think it's really important that we share our perspectives from our communities, and we can really be beneficial to this government if we are allowed to be in these spaces where we have control and a voice over policies, regulations, and laws that have worked primarily against minorities, people of color, asthma, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, leukemia, birth defects, premature deaths. We experience these at rates higher than the general population. And we're at a time that we need to really think about the next 7 generations and really focus on how are we going to restore and repair our land. This is a opportunity for us to really realize and reflect and refocus on what we need to do going forward and to be awakened from our slumber. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and begin with Stephanie.
My name is Stephanie BadSoldier Snow, and I am from the Meskwaki community in central Iowa. I am an anthropologist. I was also part of our initial programming for our food sovereignty initiative. I was one of 2 people who got that off the ground back in 2011, 2012. At that time, I was part of historical preservation, and I was the cultural consultant element to creating Meskwaki Food Sovereignty Initiative. I am also a presenter for our tribal workforce development program, in which I give presentations on the importance of healing from personal and intergenerational trauma and how food sovereignty ties into that healing for overall health and well-being. And I am a gardener and grower for my family. It's a great honor to be here with you all.
Hello, my name is Shelley Buffalo, and I am a member of the Meskwaki tribe in central Iowa. Currently, I am food sovereignty coordinator for the Meskwaki tribe. The program recently was moved under workforce development, which is really exciting for me because my new director is a Meskwaki woman as well. So that's already since October 1st. It's looking good. It's looking fabulous. It's really, I mean, the sensibilities of Indigenous women are a powerful thing. And it's the beautiful thing that is happening right now with Moms Clean Air Force is that that there is a conscious effort to make space for Indigenous voices. And that's needed like more than ever. And so I'm thankful, thank you for inviting me to be part of this forum.
Stephanie Hall Ado Kintatini Nishlin Tetnizatni Bashashi Kiani Dasha Senja Kinit Dashanella. My name is Stephanie Hall. I'm the Executive Director of Tolani Lake Enterprises, a nonprofit organization located in the southwest region of the Navajo Nation in northern Arizona. And my organization focuses in on food, water, and economic security. Some of the projects we are working on right now include providing grants and technical support and workshops to our local growers in a way that supports them in a culturally appropriate and culturally intelligent way. And so what that means is being able to take the time to listen to the oral stories and listen to provide opportunities for our local traditional knowledge holders to have a space to teach and be able to show how our elders used to do it, our ancestors used to do it, used to work with the land, and the cosmology behind it, the philosophy, the life way, the principles and the values behind that sort of growing space, growing area, and growing food for the communities. We've been able to really establish a type of program with curriculum for young people, but also at more experienced, maybe conventional farmers, and start leading them in that direction so we build soil health and we're not degrading the land.
I'm glad to have these ladies to be able to have this discussion with us and explain more to us about Indigenous identity and food sovereignty and how it will help us combat climate change challenges going forward. So we'll start discussion there.
Food sovereignty obviously is choosing what you eat. So that's number one, right? Choosing how you're going to eat and what you're going to eat and what quality of food you're going to eat and feed your family. And so then going along from there, sort of an extension of that is to be able to have the right to grow traditional foods or go out and gather traditional foods. But it all starts with a choice that we make with regard to our own bodies. There's a lot of evidence, and I think there are a lot of people who can speak to the experience that they've had going from processed foods to more natural foods, just to start with, right? Lots of things have happened physically to their bodies that they have noticed a healthful change. And then from there, we know that obviously your food has an effect on how well your brain works and how your emotional health will be, and your and ultimately your spiritual health. So it's all being able to find a way to access traditional foods. So like, say for instance, corn is something that ties us all together as Native people, and that's available to you even in an urban setting. So choosing how you're going to eat corn, you can still have tortillas and things like that. I think that also it becomes an act of decolonization. I think that's really, really important. So if you're being mindful about what you're choosing, then that's it right there. It's not being fed to you, and you're not just looking at commercials and saying, I want to eat that, right? So it's making those choices. It really comes down to that. I think one really good example of this would be right here in my own community. We went from this sense of wealth, which was a holistic type of a health, or wealth, and health, really. It's this holistic thing, right? It's part of the kinship system, is part of it. And how you plotted out your gardens was related to that. And then how you actually went out and began to turn the soil in order to start planting, that had a whole sort of it kind of simplifies it and makes it seem a little bit trite to say there's like a ceremony involved with it, but it was really part of our belief system. And so how we grew our food was really integral to our identity and who we are and how we interacted with each other. And so we went from that sense of wealth, right, a holistic sense, and we had enough food to eat, and you go from that kind of a lifestyle to this other thing where you're placed into poverty. It wasn't something that we actively did, it was something that was actively done to us.
So I want to thank Stephanie, my niece, for going into the kinship system a little bit, and I want to start with that because it's part of rejuvenating our food sovereignty here at Meskwaki is to rejuvenate the kinship system, because ultimately, we along the way, thanks to one of the most I guess destructive tools of the colonizer were boarding schools, which was taking away children from their communities and basically instilling shame, beating them for speaking their language, and ensuring that that there was a break in handing down of that knowledge. And so when we talk about our kinship system, that is an act of resilience. When Stephanie and I, when we recognize our relationship through the kinship system, that is our, that's one of our most powerful tools that we have as Meskwaki women, to reestablish those bonds, and especially reestablish that act of taking care of each other. One thing, Shaina, that really, I'm glad that you talked about your own experiences in urban Indian and feeling that disconnect with your ancestral foods. But that's very much a reality here in Indian country too. And due to like the example that I gave you, that it wasn't an accident that happened. That happened through United States policy and through policy of religious organizations that ran these boarding schools. And growing up at Meskwaki, one of the things that really started happening in my generation was a refusal to share ancestral knowledge. So there were more and more parents who weren't speaking their language to their children, weren't passing that down. And even when children asked questions, whether it was relatives or other people in the community, then that's when the shaming came into play. And you should already know this. How many times have you heard that, Stephanie? How come you don't know this? You should already know this. Like, what's wrong with you? I guess you're not Indian enough. And imagine how destructive that is to a child, especially a child who is attending public schools and who is taught by the white community that they're not good enough, that they're nothing. And then you have this lateral violence in your own community. We really do need to look at those current practices, that current culture within our communities, and really start to disassemble, those parts that have been so dramatically affected by the thinking of the colonial system. So like here with food sovereignty, my new director, Shelley and I, we worked on writing a new position, which is the title of that position is Ancestral Farming Specialist. And the person that we're looking for is strong in their language, spoken, written, as well as strong in their farming knowledge, our ancestral ways and our foods. planting those seeds and taking good care of your garden is an essential part of the Meskwaki identity, especially our Tama Flint corn, which we have grown that corn for about 4,000 years. I think people have come to accept that their meat is cheap and that's a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's cheap because human beings are being treated as fungible units in these meat processing plants. It's cheap because our waterways are being completely destroyed by the confined animal facilities. We really have our work cut out for us in our own communities in trying to spread awareness and educate people that cheap food is bad food.
Thank you, Shelley, for having that important conversation on on Indigenous identity being a part of this food sovereignty, and how it's really detrimental to our environment and our health that we don't have these local foods in our system. And I'm glad you brought up the fact of cheap food is not good food, and it's not a good process for us to take as human beings, and why we need food sovereignty in our communities, whether we're Indigenous or not. And we'll go to Stephanie Hall.
Tolani Lake Enterprises is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, native run, located in Tolani Lake, a Navajo community in the southwest portion of the Navajo Nation in northern Arizona. Our mission is to essentially strengthen food, water, and economic systems using culturally appropriate, culturally intelligent ways, and incorporating our Native youth and our elders. An important part of that is ensuring that our Native peoples have a voice at the table when it comes to these policymakers making decisions on our behalf. And so we've been really advocating to have our partners, our grassroots organizers, elders, traditional knowledge holders, to be at the table, or to at least provide input, so that when policies are made that are revised, that they're done in a way that supports rather than prevents our growers from thriving. And so, using what we do have, we have our language, which is also born out of the growing spaces. We have peacemaking negotiation, which was born out of the growing spaces. And these are tools and knowledge and resources that we use to really try to work through the hurt and the trauma that was mentioned earlier through things like the boarding school system. The boarding school is one of the more highlighted actions that the United States policy back in the day pushed upon our people in order to assimilate us, first to weed us out and then to assimilate us. Coming back to center, coming back to Hojo, our growing spaces, is an act of re-identifying who we are and recreating those streams of solidarity that that they tried to take from us. When you give yourself the opportunity to think through all that you have accomplished and what you would like to move forward with, and not get stuck in that rat race where you just have to go, 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 go. That's a Western, concept. People pride themselves on working 80 hours a week. That's crazy. So, just being able to find that space and hold yourself accountable to that space. That evaluation time period, that's when you get to figure out, okay, so this didn't work or this worked. And so now you want to readjust things. And in the growing agricultural field, that's where, okay, that cover crop didn't work, or that method of growing 4 or 5 different varieties of different plants, it didn't work, so I'm going to change things up. That's your opportunity to make fixes and adjust. Just to kind of briefly speak to the climate change issue. So through the regenerative work, and we call it regenerative economies, and we're probably going to shift again because it's just getting too trendy. But through the regenerative work that we're doing, our partnerships, we're the real deal. And I'm not saying that to say, yay, self-congratulatory or anything like that, but because of our work and the people who have dedicated so much time and effort and energy and thought into it, we have a lot of strong partnerships with our tribal programs. with the Navajo Nation. And so one of the work that we're doing is figuring out how to do land restoration through native seeds. And so that's a partnership with Navajo Nation Heritage Plants Program and the USGS RAMPS program. And our organization's at the lead of that. And that's basically figuring out how to adapt to climate change, because we know our monsoon seasons are changing. We know our snow is lessened, and we know that we have stronger and more torrent rainfall at weird times of the year. Like, you can't even count on the rainfall to soak our fields the way that they used to. So how do we adapt to that? Not just in the field, but when you go out to livestock grazing range areas, our areas are deteriorated because we haven't mitigated the impact first. We haven't decreased our livestock because it's wildly unpopular. And we haven't adapted. We haven't adapted to these changing climate situations. So, using that kind of like closer growing space, like a garden, we are trying to help farmers understand the tools of building soil health. And when you build soil health, then you're increasing the opportunity for rainfall to absorb into the ground. And I could go on and on about those types of techniques, but that's just the basics of it. And then also on the rangeland, what type of grasses grow in what type of conditions. And so we have these little plots of different grass varieties, forbs, shrubs, to see, if it's irrigated this much, what's the need for this water? If it's not irrigated at all, what's the survival rate? And so, just trying to understand that type of information will allow us to help inform policy again, and hopefully potentially mitigate a lot of the damaging impacts that I think it's going to come, and we have to figure out how to cushion the blow.